brief introduction to the topic, and then I'll also introduce my panelists. So, in Pakistan, and why this subject is so important. Here's a small context around it. In Pakistan, women have historically been underrepresented in frontline roles, whether in manufacturing, logistics, distribution, agriculture, or field operations. However, as societal norms shift and industries evolve, more women are stepping into these positions, reshaping the workforce and redefining what leadership looks like in sectors traditionally dominated by men. This change is not just about gender equality, it is about unlocking the untapped potential of Pakistan's economy by embracing the skills, resilience, and leadership qualities that women bring to these critical roles. Now, this is not a typical gender debate. This is about how women are being integrated within the frontline roles, yet they are being underrepresented. The private sector has a crucial role to play in accelerating this total shift that we are talking about, bringing women on the front lines. Many companies in Pakistan are already prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to break down barriers and create opportunities for women in unconventional roles by investing in training program, mentorship opportunities, and creating a supportive work environment. These organizations are paving the way for women to take on leadership positions in frontline industries. Um, I will not be getting into much details about, what this topic entails, because we have with us our respected panelists. But before I introduce our panelists, there's just one request from the participants who have joined us to keep your mobile phones on silent mode, and also to avoid creating noise at the back, because it will disrupt the discussion that we are having. This session is being live streamed on social media platforms of STPI, and we'd be happy if you can share the links among your networks, so that more people and more women, more youngsters can enjoy the discussion. Thank you. So, introducing the panelists, today we are joined by an incredible panel of leaders who have each made a remarkable impact in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly in the realm of women in frontline roles. These leaders are known for their fierce advocacy for gender equality and commitment to fostering inclusive workplaces. First, we have Sara Hassan, head of the HR at PepsiCo Pakistan. Thank you so much, Sara, for joining us today. Ms. Nabila Zar Malik, Head of Partnerships and Communication, UN Women. We have Rabia Khatak, Head of DNI Jazz. We have Saida Kiran Altaf, who has joined us online as Head of HR Syngenta. And last but not the least, we have Halima Khan. She is the Head of Corporate Sustainability and Energy Update, and also convener SDGs and Energy at FPCCI. She is also representing women in energy. So thank you so much. I hope this was a brief introduction, but just in case if anything I've skipped, please feel free to add into your introduction. I'm sure there's a lot more to add into all of your introductions, but thank you. So I'll just directly jump over to the questions. And this question is from all of you. Can you share your own experience? What is motivation behind becoming a champion for DE&I in general, especially in advancing for women in frontline roles? So Sarah, if I can start from you.
Very so thank you first of all for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to sort of come and interact with all of you. I think for me the inspiration really sort of stems from, and this is a question that I keep asking myself and those around me. I've been in the workforce for close to around, I don't know, almost 15-20 years. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that the discussions around gender parity at the workplace that was taking place when I started working are the same discussions that are taking place 20 years on. We have somehow not moved on from the whole notion of itni khawateen honi chahiye, yahan pe itni khawateen honi chahiye, these are the number of women that need to be represented, to probably more nuanced aspects of inclusion and diversity. And I think that in itself for me was is probably one of the reasons why in a personal capacity and along with the organization that I'm representing, would not want to be would not want this to be our legacy as we move on and pave way for the next generation of leaders coming in. So for me, it's about shifting the narrative on gender from the number of women that we're able to bring in to how we're able to see them grow, how we're able to see them thrive, and how we're able to see them, lead organizations like the one that we represent. So that's probably my.
Thank you, Sarah. Almost every woman, they have their story to tell, and that's always inspirational. Thank you. I'll be getting back to you with another question. So, Miss Nabila, if you can also comment.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Nabila Malik, and I'm currently looking after partnership and communication at UN Women. Being called a leader is like really, it takes a while for me to absorb that. As a Pakistani woman, we all go through a lot of struggle in our own lives. And people look at us and sometimes they think maybe they got it easy, that's why they made it. I would like to start from my own journey, and I don't think it was ever easy. I got a scholarship, and I come from a respectable, educated family. But suddenly my brother decided that it's too bold a step for a woman, a young woman, to go to the country to study. And he objected. So the person who made it possible for me to await the scholarship was my mother. She said, just go, I'll deal with it. I remember to this day, early morning, I had to catch a flight. I got a cab. I sat in it and I left without saying goodbye. So saying that, that's the motivation which brought us here. But then things like that give you an inspiration, like, if my mother was able to do that, and she made sure that I got the education that I thought I needed, then I should be able to do better. And that is the reason why I never stopped. I started my journey from being a journalist, interviewed a lot of women, over 100 profiles, working women. Then from there went to the NGO sector. From there ended up in UN Women. But my goal in life has always been to make sure that women and everybody, a fair share at life. And that's my motivation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nabila. And I'm sure these kind of stories are still, we tend to hear from so many young women even now. But I think your journey will be an inspiration for all of those women who are facing through the same challenges. May I please request you, Ma'am Rabia, for your comment also?
No, thank you. It's I know, like was mentioned, every girl in this room and every boy in its own way has a little story there. And I'm sure it's a very touching story. For me, it was, as you can know from my name, Rabia Khatak. I come from a Pathan background. I belong to a village of Karak. So it was completely understood. I'm a girl, child, not the best thing on earth that comes in to the world. Then it was understood, education, minimum. Enough for me to get married to a right respectable family member. Since outside marriages are always a little discouraged. Father was also of the same opinion. So at every stage of my life, if I managed to do something, it was a struggle. The struggle, it meant the family was going to have a lot of issues. My mother would face them, others would face them. And I'm sure you girls have also gone through that. But what I want to tell you is the story doesn't end there. So today I'm sitting here with a master's. Yes, I got accepted abroad. I did not go abroad. I wasn't allowed. It didn't happen. It was a fight I lost. But end of the day, after my marriage, I managed to do my doctorate from abroad. So again, the story, this struggle must continue. I joined working, was in no way. You're going to work? Sorry, doesn't happen in our family. Women working, impossible. Went there, got the job. Okay, fine. Got into an NGO, moved, managed to get a job in the UN. Don't ask me how, what happened in the background. A lot happened. Went into the UN, of course, loved the fact that I was there earning well, got married. I remember the first thing that my boss said when I got engaged. He's like, "You're going to leave this job, right?" I was like, "No, I'm going to continue." Interestingly, I continued with my marriage. I continued with my 2 children. I continued to the date. So again, over here, the struggle continued because a lot of people saw me as a female who has to retire now. Ab to bahut ho gaya yaar. Then I headed the disaster management program in the UN. Before me, there was a retired person, I mean, he's 65 plus, who was a male, and was always seen as a male dominated entity. So when I went in there, it was like, तुम्हारा तो छोटा सा बच्चा है, तुम कैसे करोगी? The floods took place, the disasters, the earthquake took place, which meant I had to work day and night. Again, from there, I went into the automobile industry. Okay, there's a long story. I'm not going to go further. Went abroad, did other things, but I went to the automobile, again, very male dominated. So right now, sitting in jazz is actually pretty little easier because it is something that's seen as main, a female dominated. You're fighting for the rights of the women. So that's what drives me. What drives me today is if I can bring that change in other people's lives, just like I did in mine.
Thank you so much, and it's indeed very inspiring. But I would not comment more on your story because there's so many questions, and I mean, step by step, we'll be getting back to you. So before I request Halima, Miss Kiran, if you would like to comment on my question, please.
Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm so delighted to be part of this panel discussion, a topic which is very close to my heart, and I think rest of the panelists have covered more or less everything. There's nothing much for me to say, except that now that we are in a position, we're all in such positions where we can make a difference. We've all have we all have our, shares and stories and backgrounds and struggles that we've left behind. So I believe it's now our responsibility to bring about a change and make it easy for all the rest of the girls who would be really stepping into, their careers, work arenas and so on. What really motivates me is, the fact that, I want to be a part of the change, bring about that change. जो कि कल को मेरी अपनी बेटी, I'm a mom to a small, it's a young little girl. So I want her, to have a much easier journey than I did, or maybe rest of us, we had to go through. My nieces as well. So this what I feel is definitely a responsibility on our shoulders. And I think every day when I am able to bring about a difference, some change, some improvement in any way at all within the workplace, talking at such panels and fora and so on and so forth, I think bit by bit we are getting closer to that goal, really. So that's what I would say, and I'd really like to hear the rest of the views as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kiran. Halima, women in energy, women on the front line. your take on my question, please.
Thank you so much, Zainab and SDPI for extending the invitation. And my story is not a lot different from what Dr. Rabia has said, because she has a doctorate, so that's why she's Dr. Rabia. So yes, hailing from a Pathan family and having that background, plus when I was doing my, I wanted to do my MS, and everyone was like, "Itna padh ke tumne kya karna hai?" Because ultimately you have to get married, and that's the ultimate goal of getting educated and all. Lekin I have no objection with that, but somehow I had a lot of obstacles there. I had a lot of resistance in education, and but somehow I was till the part of getting my uh, PhD scholar, but I haven't done my PhD yet. But still, my parents' support was there. My mother and my father. My Baba was always like, "Go ahead. I'll see. I'll see everyone. There is nothing that is going to harm you." And that was totally my parents' support till the date I'm here. I have faced a lots and lots of obstacles in my career, in my education, in everywhere. But I am sitting here with a lot of tags, and people proudly say, "Oh, she's my friend." So that's I think that's the achievement.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. That's an achievement of all of us sitting here in this room, all the young women who are already here with us. It's usually the fathers, the mother, fathers who are at our back who support us. So thank you for your comment. So Sarah, my next question is, again, I'll start from you. You mentioned about, your journey. There were obstacles, and I'm sure there are obstacles even today. But I mean, we are very much culturally integrated society. So, are there any cultural or systematic factors that make these roles particularly challenging? Your take, please.
Sorry. So I think yes, culturally, there are certain norms that do not make access to frontline roles very easy, right? Because inevitably, frontline roles are still a very male-dominated space, whether it's frontline workforce in the factories, or it's frontline in sales, or in the farms. It's really a role or a space which is where you'll find more men than women, and therefore it is very difficult for family members to allow their the women in their family to sort of go and access those spaces. That's one. The second challenge that we have is these roles also are a lot more demanding, because these are not 9 to 5 roles. So they're usually roles that happen in different shifts, or they have much longer working hours. And women are disproportionately in our society, of course, in most societies, but more so in ours, um, required to take on a heavier burden when it comes to managing the household or supporting their children, etc. So that makes accessibility to these roles even more harder. The second challenge that we've seen essentially is around the fact that we don't have the right infrastructures. So one of the challenges that we faced extensively, and I know Nestle has done the same, and they've done a pretty interesting and a good job of overcoming this along with us, is in farms where we do see a lot of women participating. We had this a higher dropout ratio, and one of the reasons where we saw women leaving uh, farm work was because they needed to take care of the children. And for us, it was a relatively easy solve, because what we started doing in most of our farms, and I know Syngenta is working on something similar now, is essentially building daycare centers. So their children are taken care of while they're working on the farm. And now the same daycare centers are being converted into smart schools. So we ensure that all these children are set up to do better things in life. So that's one. The other thing that we see when we talk about frontline sales, for example, is a lot of frontline sales work is not owned or operated by large multinationals. We partner with our distributors, and those distributors have varying priorities when it comes to investment. Um, Ensuring that we have something as simple as it's easier to. So, one of the things that we can decide today collectively is to sort of start bringing in more female and frontline sales. But when we started going and talking to distributors, we realized that they don't have the right facilities for their men, let alone their women. So I remember there were stories in Nestle, for example, where women had to be placed in spaces or near distributors where they had a McDonald's or a KFC. So if they needed to use the facilities, they could go close by. So that's another thing where we had to vertically integrate ourselves with our distributors and partners to enable them to ensure that we had mothers' rooms, we had locker areas, and we had the right facilities to support women in frontline sales. So that was the second big challenge, or this is the second big challenge that we generally do face when it comes to inducting more and more women in the workforce. So it's not so much cultural, as much as it is infrastructure. And it's more of a chicken and egg situation, because we tend to sort of, unless we bring enough women out there to sort of make um, unless we bring enough women into the workforce, particularly when it comes to frontline roles, we will really not be able to shift the mindset and really genuinely bring a meaningful change. So I think those are the two big aspects that we need to consider when we talk about challenges in this space.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, you're absolutely right. This is more of an infrastructural challenge than cultural challenge. And even now, there are hardly any daycares in office facilities. And what we tend to hear most of the time that, oh, if we don't need daycares, there are co-working spaces, there are daycares, you can get your babies admitted to those daycares which are nearby. Why do we need to have a daycare within the office facility? So I think this is a basic thing that needs to be understood. If a woman needs to work in an environment that is suitable for her, where she can think, she can excel with her capabilities, if these are not provided, then that's not happening. So thank you for your take on that. Nabila, my question from you: so what are biggest barriers in providing equal opportunities to women in frontline roles, and how can organizations support those women, please?
Okay, I think everybody here understands the usual challenges that we all grow up with. I would like to focus a little on the unconscious bias that exists everywhere. And the other thing that I recently discovered, which is called men threatened by women equality. A man in a very senior position at the UN said this, and I made him explain, what do you mean by that? And he said, there is a job market, there are certain jobs there, and if you let the women compete for the same jobs and they get the equal opportunity to get it, they takes job from our quota. In a country like Pakistan that's developing, where employment is a challenge, all of that, this creates an environment where even when people understand how important it is to have diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplaces, they resist it. They don't resist it because they don't understand. They probably resist it because they think it doesn't suit them and it will take away from their share. So that is one of the things that, after talking to a lot of people, I've realized, because other than, women not getting opportunity for education, they lack in skills, mentorship programs are lacking that need to be supported. There are all these things. But I think the biggest hindrances are the unconscious biases that we have. Our society, we have defined role for men and women. I was totally surprised to talk to women actually working in the private sector. And I said that, you said about childcare, daycare centers. The other biggest issue is the transportation, the mobility, how to get to a certain place and how to get back from it. And I said, why can't the companies provide that? You should make a demand and make them accept it. It's a fair demand. It's among the standards, the family-friendly policy standards. And they themselves were reluctant. They said, you see, how can I ask the owner of my company to make special allowances for me when he can hire a man at the same salary and he won't have to do none of these things for him. And that points out to a bigger challenge, and that's the woman's reproductive role. Because other than the fact that she has to produce the child, none of the remaining responsibilities have to be the woman's alone. They need to be shared by the man. If a woman needs to take the child to a daycare one day, the father can also do the same. The father can do all the other things that are required to raise a child other than giving birth. So for that one small period, the women themselves have convinced themselves that this is probably the frontline jobs are not suitable for them because they have this other very important job that they have to perform in life. That job is important for the sustainability of humankind. If humans cannot understand that, then let it be and get to the front line, because that's where you belong. That little period that you need to perform your reproductive duties should not be a handicap for the rest of your life. Women have potential and they need to explore this. But I think underlining biases, these are the things that I've been able to understand so far.
Thank you so much. So I think, of course, that's a very important message for all of us. Maybe we have also made ourselves think within that particular box, and we're not thinking out of the box. That's also a barrier. So, Kiran, my next question is from you. How do you think women in agriculture contribute to economic growth in rural areas, and what more can be done to recognize their role? That's very important. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much. So I think there's no secret. It's not a secret that, a big chunk of the workforce in the field is, it comprises of women. It's about, here we are talking about a figure of about 70%, 68 to 70% of the workforce in the field today is women farmers, and, in positions, unfortunately, where their efforts are not recognized. Sometimes, as the family-based work and everything, well, a lot of times, not sometimes, majority of the times it's not even paid. So basically what's happening is we're talking about 70% of the workforce of the farmers, that's women. They are not getting paid for all the work that they're doing on a regular basis. They have a big role to play here, definitely. Without their contribution to what's happening in the agriculture, it's going to be really, in a situation where, the agriculture, with the farmers, their infrastructure and everything, it might as well collapse. What we should be doing to, recognize it, to make sure that they have, better amenities, facilities at their disposal. I think it'll take time. It's a journey, and we have to really zoom out and look at the whole value stream or the value chain, basically, when it comes to, the human capital. So, it starts really early on, in the lives of, girls, born in such families where, they are expected to assume roles. Think about a farmer's household, where those little girls are supposed to just grow up, no need for education. They're just going to be a helping hand in the farms and at the field. And, there doesn't have to be any, investment in terms of, for instance, their health, and like I said, their education and so on. So the focus is completely removed. So, it has to start somewhere there. Then as they grow up, and if a small percentage of them end up getting educated, end up in universities, what's happening there? So I'm just throwing in a figure. About 30% of the graduates from agri universities is women. And the unfortunate bit is that out of that 30%, a further 30% of that 30% end up probably getting jobs, and, also about them, that little percentage that ends up, getting into an employment, they don't even continue. They're not able to sustain because of the reasons that Nabila just spoke of, What are the facilities? How are the organizations facilitating? And so on and so forth. So here we are talking about, the farmers, their household, the women workers in the field. Then we are talking about those, fortunate ones who end up in schools getting educated. and then stepping into the agri industry. So there's a whole spectrum that we are talking about here. When it comes to the women farmers, the percentage is again very low of those women who own the land. It's probably less than 5%, and here I'm talking about the big level, big scale farmers with bigger, acreage and so on and so forth. They might have access to some better, facilities, some of them. And by the way, just to share a very heartening fact as well, that, a sizable percentage of women, land owning women farmers are coming out of high income and educated sector as well. So now they're adopting, new technology, different ways of working, employing women as well in their at their fields and farms and so on. So that's happening. On the other part, where it comes to the women getting employment at agri organizations, there are a lot that still needs to go in there. So what Sarah just mentioned in an anecdote, where she said, the distributions are, created closer to, facilities or restaurants which have those facilities. That is completely applicable to what I'm talking about as well. Still, I mean, women, when they step out, there are many other things that they're concerned about. So, some basics of everything. So, for instance, I'm going to talk a little bit about, Nabila spoke of reproductive health, and so on. So here we are also talking about a very natural phenomenon of a woman menstruating. What kind of support are we giving to them? So, for instance, Syngenta came about with this idea of giving them flexibility. Again, this needed a lot of change management, but then because these are the women in sales, so how are they supposed to be flexible?
I would request if you can answer this. I have a question regarding the capacity building and the skilling and this from you. So I would really like to listen more on that from you. But in the meanwhile, thank you for sharing the on ground realities that women farmers are facing, and there's a lot more that we can hardly think of, but once we are on the ground and once we start listening to them, their challenges are quite different than what women in the urban centers are facing. So thank you for your input, and that's very valuable indeed. Rabia, my question is from you now. Limited access to technology is a barrier for women in rural and field-based positions. What are some innovative ways your organization has used technology to enhance productivity and inclusion for women on the front lines? That's a long question, but you are the right person to respond. Over to you, please.
No, thank you. Okay, just building on what my colleagues have mentioned right now. Yes, you're right. It's not easy to bring in this time, but it's not easy to bring in saleswomen onto the field. So what are we doing right? Right now, what I'm doing with universities like NUST, like IBA, we have a lot of girls. I don't know how many in this room have computer science degrees, or they have sales degrees. But when we are looking around in the market, we don't usually find them easily, especially those with software engineering. As a result, when we are hiring, there's a bit of a gap when it comes to females. So I'm wondering where those women, so one of the research that I'm planning to do is, where are these women hiding? So again, that's one idea, so that we can get some idea. And then of course, when we liaison with these universities, we get to know that this is where the next batch is coming in. That's one idea. Of course, the rural women are also included, because again, the universities that are there. We're also talking to NAFTEC. I think we've got this excellent chairperson, Gulmina, who's right now very strongly advocating. Again, women have to support women, and men, of course, have to support us as well. So over here, she's supporting us in coming up with a course for technicians. We don't ever think of girls when it comes to generator ki technician hai, plumbing bhi hum nahi sochte. Okay? So what we're trying to do is the non-traditional lineman. Another चीज थी कि आप लड़की को पोल पे lineman क्यों नहीं बन सकती? Lineman तो होना नहीं चाहिए, line person होना चाहिए. लेकिन the idea is कि how can we do that? That was start off small, but let's move in there finally. So there are some of the positions, here are some of the places, but again, very interestingly, when I had a meeting with her, she mentioned that we don't have a course like this. She mentioned that if there was a course, it was all male dominated. Because I said, मैं आज उस लड़की को उठा लूंगी अगर आपकी कोई है. But she had nobody. It was a good pay package. So that was interesting for me. So that's something we are working with the government. So again, Jazz has taken a number of initiatives. The meeting I just left for this speaking engagement was with Planning Commission. They're looking at how to bring in women into the police. Again, a very non-traditional law, but very important for all of us. But again, over here, the idea is, again, we have managed to get somewhere. We help out others to move in that direction. We have a few apps. Again, over here, I don't know if you guys know, we have a Padho app. We have a health app. That's how we also sort of get Jazz to reach out to there. Padho app is basically grade 1 से grade 12 तक उसमें Quranic classes भी होती हैं. उसमें हम क्या करते हैं कि एक rural women अगर पढ़ लेती है. So again, over here, it becomes a sort of an asset for us. Mobile repairs पे हम देख सकते हैं. So idea is there's no question. DNI for Jazz is one of the most important agendas. Therefore, we have won many awards on that, and we continue to want to lead on that. So for that, we need to take initiatives like these. Thank you.
Thank you. Halima, I think building on to what Rabia has mentioned, especially you're in the energy sector, we see very less women in this sector. Why is that? Are women not comfortable in taking up roles in this sector? Or if you would like to share any instance where you think there are other barriers that are hindering women taking roles in energy sector?
Okay, continuing to what Dr. Rabe has said, yes, we have a lot of gaps over there. Ms. Nadia has said that there is unconscious biasness in the sector. We also face this in the energy sector, but I would like to comment here that I believe in the technology and IT sector, women are little upgraded in the energy sector. I would like to comment here that there are initiatives that has been taken for the women and by these energy companies, and I would like to seriously comment about this K Electric. They have their course as Roshni Baji, and they have their line women there now. Line instead of line men, they have line women there, and they are in the market, and they are doing a really good job. And unki ek certification hoti hai, and then they go through a complete process, and then they get this certification, or they are working in the industry as well. But yes, we have faced a lots and lots of barrier, and still we are facing lots of barriers, because probably the women in the energy sector, they are working in the silos. There are different sectors and they are working there, but the other woman doesn't know. We have a network with Women in Energy Network, and there we share our initiatives and our commitments and everything. And we have this power lunch after every some time, and there we do this networking thing. In this sector, this is mostly a male dominant society, but when it comes to the informal networking, it's always like a boys club. But because women are not responsive in coming to such informal networking dinners, in meetings and all, because of the cultural stereotypes. So हम जहाँ ये बात कर रहे हैं इन सारी women की, but वहाँ पर एक और sector भी है, that is also about women, that we have few women who doesn't have the attitude to work. We have to work on the attitude as well. That's the biggest barrier. I think that women has to work on it, that the attitude to work and to support the other woman. And more or less, I would like to say that there is a lack of female mentorship and female models in the energy sector, where we have to work on that.
Thank you, Halima. And yes, that's also a challenge. Khawateen ki ek dusre ko support bahut zaruri hai. Sarah, so that brings me to my next question. Can you share any successful initiatives from your organization that have enabled women to take up frontline roles traditionally dominated by men? I know you are one of those women. So, can you share any other instances?
So no, I think one of the things that PepsiCo at large has done really, really well is when we looked at our diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda, we wanted it to be across the value chain, because a lot of times it's easier to pick a certain segment of or a certain part of your value chain, and it's easier to bring in women in the offices, it's easier to bring in women in certain roles in HR maybe. But what PepsiCo essentially decided to do was they curated interventions specific to the various aspects of our value chain, starting from the farms, where we started setting up daycare centers, as I highlighted earlier, where we wanted to not just encourage women to start taking roles in the farm, but also keeping them in the farms. The other thing that we recently did was with GDA, much to what Kiran was saying, we also want to encourage female farm holding. So a lot of women do own farms in Pakistan, but not all of them are able to actively do anything or actively engage in managing those farms. And with GDA, we've been able to put together a program where we are encouraging more and more women and upskilling them to lead that part of or that role. The second thing that we did when it comes, and then we looked at our factories. We are happy to report that at PepsiCo, 27% of our frontline workforce are women. And if I compare it to the next best organization in Pakistan, they represent around, their frontline female workforce representation is around 6%. So we are far, far ahead compared to most organizations in Pakistan, which is really commendable. And part of the reason is the fact that we are very, very intentional in ensuring that, again, we have the right infrastructure and we do provide the right platforms to be able to attract, engage, and continue to grow these women. The bigger challenge that we had was in frontline sales, because factory mein to ye, we have this advantage of the fact that we still are able to, it's a controllable environment. But when we talk about frontline sales, where they have to actually go and engage with distributors and they have to engage with sales or retailers, that was a little hard for a couple of reasons. One, pehle to hame unko enable karna tha in order to get to these locations, because we don't have the strongest public transportation system. So they all had to learn how to ride scooties, and we had to provide them with those scooties. And then this whole this whole societal challenge where, parents were not, or in some cases, brothers or extended family members were not comfortable allowing women to take on field sales roles. And so in order to facilitate them, and at least to start the momentum going, we set up a first ever, I think it's the first for Pakistan as well, a full female-led distribution center. So we engaged with one of our partners, and believe it or not, it was in a city like Sialkot. So we engaged with one of our partners. We were able to set up an entire distribution center where everyone is a female, including the security guard. And we've just extended and expanded that in Lahore. So we have an extended version in Sialkot now, and about two distributors in Lahore who are supporting us in this drive. And we want to scale this further up. So that was that. The other thing that we also did, essentially, when it came to frontline workforce or female participation, was we wanted to also encourage women who were differently abled, which I would argue is probably the most marginalized segment of our society, right? And through a program like Kabil, we were able to bring them on board to do telesales for us. And these women have been with us for about 2 years now. And this initiative has now been extended to something called Beyond Sights, where we are now engaging with fully blind and partially sighted women to be able to come and engage in the workforce. And the gap in what we are paying them versus what they would be getting as regular employment, probably in schools or wherever they could, was almost 10 times, which is very meaningful for us. So that's really what really drives and gives a lot of us purpose in terms of doing what we do every day. But to the point that Halima made, yes, earlier, and so did you. I think one of the things that has really enabled us across the board, because we are also one of those very few organizations that has a leadership ratio of 50-50. So 50% of the women in our leadership, if 50% of the people in our leadership team are women. And one of the things that we've been able to do, that's been able to help us foster, is this entire notion of women inclusivity. So we have these platforms, and this really big one, which we call WIN, and this is women supporting women. And that, you are right, is in most cases a deal breaker when it comes to having success stories of women growing within the organization. But more than that, I think one of the things that has also worked extensively for us is creating male allies and male champions. Yeah, because there is a particular glass ceiling that we need, particularly that women need support to overcome. And in most cases, it's usually the support of another man who can help us overcome that. So that's where our male allies have become one of our key champions and trailblazers when it comes to some of these initiatives. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think there's so many learnings from the initiatives you have shared by PepsiCo. But one of the key learnings, where you mentioned that even the security guard is a woman, I think this is extremely important. Especially we have women colleges, women schools, where security guards they have to be women to avoid so many, threatening situations for young girls here. And your organization has set up that precedence for so many other organizations. And I just hope that, the kind of diversity inclusion we see in private sector, I wish we also see that in public sector. That's missing. And through this platform, through all of you, the women trailblazers here, we would really like to send this message to all other organizations who really need to integrate this diversity inclusion in their organization. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Nabila, my next question is from you. So given the strong influence of community perceptions on female employment, how does UN Women promote acceptance of women as breadwinners, especially in more conservative areas?
Okay, first of all, I have an issue with the word breadwinner. We can now, the concept the world over is that you need two incomes to run a house. So you don't want to replace a man, you don't want to take this responsibility for him and tell him to sit in a corner, I'll still cook and clean for you, and you don't have to bring in any money. So that's not what we want. We want women to have equal opportunity to go out, explore their full potential, and bring the best benefit to their families and be a more recognized partner. Because the other concept that is incorrect is that women don't work. They work, everybody, even those who call themselves कि हम कुछ नहीं करते, घर पे होते हैं, कुछ नहीं करते, they all work. And the way UN Women is trying to get all of this into perspective and develop a mutual understanding about these concepts is introduction of something called care economy. Care economy is now being recognized. All the care work that goes unrecognized, if you give it, commercialize it, like make daycare centers, make all these little places where you can get what the woman is providing you for free, then the woman will be free to go and work outside. And also that will be a way of generating income for other women if women take up that job. So that is one that we're trying to do. The other more important one is that UN Women has introduced the women empowerment principles for the private sector. And we have our champions here. PepsiCo, I remember, won the award in 2022 for its initiative, and Jazz as well. I was coming to you. So they're both our champions there. The thing that this framework does, this women empowerment principle, there are 7 principles. They promote gender equality at the leadership level. There are 7. I can leave them with you guys if you want. I can read them out. There is a whole process. The private sector sign up for it. Then they are supposed to monitor their progress against it. So this provides a framework against which they can actually evaluate what is it that they are doing, which is promoting gender equality and women empowerment. Now, the reason why this is important is that the studies show two things. And this is UN Women promoting these ideas because we tell them when we go. The studies show, I think it was McKinsey in 2020, that gender inclusive companies that actually have them at the leadership have 20% more profitability. The other thing is, and these are studies from the globe, so not just Pakistan limited. The other thing is that the income that the woman generates, 90% of that income goes into community uplift. She will be, puts that money in her kids' education, better nutrition, all of that. So it's a win-win for everyone. And the third argument that we provide is that if you keep the women out, especially for the private sector, anything that you produce, any service that you give, will miss out on the 50% clientele that you have. Because unless women are at the leadership, especially the information technology that still needs to work very hard to get there, unless they have women there when they are producing these products, when they're manufacturing, when they're working on the design, to tell them what is it that women need, their product will not cater to that 50% of the market. So with that, these are some of the things. And then with our private sector partners, we also provide trainings, we also provide awareness about rights and all. And the other important thing that we do is that we bring the different sectors together. We bring private sector with the government, we ourselves, the international agencies, to develop policies that result in standardization of things. And then you can monitor and actually see where you stand and what needs to be done. Data is the third one, but the way you're looking at me, I think I don't have time. But you know, I think my message here is that we all the sectors need to work together to bring gender equality and women empowerment into this country, which is badly needed. Private sector can do it very effectively because they have very clear things to work on. Their indicators are very clear. If they are convinced and they can include this, they can make a huge difference. The 7 principles, just 1 minute. Gender equal corporate leadership, gender equality in workplace, employee health and safety, education and training for women, enterprise and supply chain, equality through community advocacy, and the last one is measurement and reporting. So far, 10,000 companies the world over have signed up for WEPs. Very happy to promote, to announce that over 150 companies in Pakistan are the WEP signatory, which tells you that the awareness is there. They want to do it, and we'll get there. Yeah. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that brings to my next question. Kiran, according to studies, 60% of women entering frontline roles feel unprepared due to lack of training. Could you discuss specific skill building or training initiatives that can prepare women for roles in agriculture or sales? Any practices from your organizations that you can share, please? Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much for the question. So I would say to begin with, it's not only women graduates, but, by and large, here we're talking about male, females, everybody. There's a huge gap when it comes to, where they stand at the time of graduation, transitioning into their career, how much are they prepared, and so on and so forth. For women, coming to women specifically, there are certain things that Syngenta Pakistan has done in the past, over the past 3 to 4 years, where we have taken an initiative which we call Women in Commercial and Women in Sales. up until 3 years ago, Syngenta did not have any female representation in the sales workforce. But over the past few months, that has changed, and now we are actually not only within Syngenta, but also I think I am very proud to say this here that we've brought this barrier down within the agri sales sector, especially. Even I can tell you that competitors within the agriculture industry now they're also hiring women, so we've really kind of broken that barrier, challenged the stereotype that women, A, they don't have an understanding of agriculture, B, they cannot be in sales. So it's actually at two layers. How we did it is something wherein we had to kind of establish a whole program around the time, taking from their hiring to welcoming them into the organization, then onboarding them, making sure there's plenty hand-holding from the line management as well as the overall organization. There's a whole support system around them, working as a safety net. So in case there's any situation where they feel they're not comfortable, they don't feel safe, there's somebody around to just, support them. This includes, taking initial certain steps where, assigning buddies specifically while they were venturing into the field for the first few times, so that they are comfortable going and meeting with the farmers, conducting those farmer meetings, what we call them, interacting with the franchisees. And Syngenta happens to have one of the biggest networks of franchises in Pakistan. So of course the sales force has to interact a lot with them, and they're all males. So this predominantly is a very male dominated environment. So bringing in women was definitely a big challenge, not only for the females, for us as an organization, and for the overall, environment as well, where, they were seeing all of a sudden a woman salesperson coming and talking to them. So I think not only at the organizational level, but also culturally. So for instance, we provide cars to our salespeople. So, those women that we brought into the organization, they did not know how to drive. So for instance, giving them the initial support of providing a driver, and then also giving them, driving lessons. Now it really makes me happy that, these women are so much, on top of everything. They go around on their own. They know the territory like the back of their hand. They know the people there. The farmers are very comfortable. I'd like to also share a very interesting anecdote with you where, one of the female sales person, she was narrating that, one of the farmers who was quite influential in that locality invited her to visit his family. So she went and socialized and so on and so forth. And then he said that I would like you to be introduced to my two daughters, who I started sending to school after I saw you working. Yeah. And the kind of respect that you command now, and, the kind of, esteem that you have around you. So, I wanted to send my daughters to school as well, so that one day they can probably assume one such position as well. So I think, bringing in women is not only bringing a change, it is definitely a business case for us as well. So not only that, but also culturally, that's bringing about a lot of change.
Absolutely. And that's indeed if a woman decides to take on a role and she becomes an inspiration for not just other women, but also other men. And I've seen this, I've experienced this, I've observed this within our society. It happens. And not all is gloom and doom when we're talking about gender. But yes, that brings to me the next question that I have for Rabia, for you as well. So we see studies indicates that gender biases in recruitment remain a barrier, as men are often favored for frontline roles in industries perceived as male dominated. how do you tackle biases in the recruitment and onboarding processes for frontline roles, and what specific measures have been effective? I know so many of us have already talked about it, but what are the best practices that are being, that are helping your organization to bring more women on the frontline roles? Over to you.
I think it would be incorrect for me to say that the unconscious biases are not there. They are there. At this point, yes, we are encouraging. We have this recruitment process that's there. I feel like there is still a lot of room for improvement, especially when it comes to gender, when it comes to transgender, when it comes to PWDs. I feel like the system still needs to operate more better. I think the conscious effort over here is when we have the shortlisting that is done, it has to have 50% in there. But then, of course, the panel is different for every one of them. So if you keep in mind, there might be some biases we need to sort of facilitate. Like, for example, I'm going to give you not of Jazz's example, but I'm going to give you in my previous employment. When I was recruiting for Balochistan, and I had got hold of a very good woman, but I remember I had a person, a male, who completely said, there's no way she can survive in this system. Why are you doing this? And I had to explain to him, do you have a daughter? I mean, I literally had to get out of the system, explain to them, sort of explain to him that if you have I asked him, do you have a wife that works? He said, yes. What do you envisage for your daughter? I would like her to do this. I sort of personally connected with him, and that's how it made a difference. Because he changed his mind, and that woman served for like 3 years, did a brilliant job. So it's over here. It's the biases. How are we unconscious bias? We do DNI trainings a lot to make sure that those biases are sort of killed to the point they can be. There are different initiatives that are taken. I still feel we have a lot to move towards.
Thank you. And I think even in this very hall, we can see there are most of the people here are women, young women, and just a few male allies. But I think even these few male allies can help create a difference. If they're sitting here listening this important discussion, definitely we are creating a change that's very much needed. So Sarah, basically Halima and Sarah, both of you, my next question is from both of you. So how can male allies and community leaders be engaged in advocating for women's employment, and what methods have been effective in shifting mindsets? Maybe we can start from you, Sarah. Halim. That's a win. That's the win initiative, actually. Please.
Okay, that's very important question. That how can men influence, or male allies can help supporting women? First of all, we have to have this mindset change. I'm not talking about the energy sector only. I'm talking on the whole, that the mindset needs to be changed, that if you are going to employ a woman, it shouldn't be like a good looking woman should be at the reception. It shouldn't be like this. You have to, yes, you have to see the skill set of women. You have to check their profiles. You have to scrutiny about the women sitting there. Then I would like to say that they should have this safe and respectful environment for the women to work there. They should listen and amplify their women voices. It's not like this that women are always wrong, but they should at least listen. And the gender biasness, the stereotypes, the cultural norms, everything is there, but we need to fight for that. We need to work on that. And with this example, I would like to say that Angro is doing a great job There are few more organizations, they are doing a great job, because in Thar, Angro has introduced these women drivers for their dumpers, and there are women who are carrying their babies on their back and driving the dumpers as well. And this is, I think this is a great support for women. And this was the idea of a male ally as well. So this Roshni Baji initiative was also a male idea. These male are supporting women in the energy sector. Specifically, if I'm talking, they are, if I talk about myself, I have been probably I'll say that I've been lucky enough that I have faced, I haven't faced much of the resistance, but yes, when it comes to the gender biasness, I was the only female, and there was no other female in the house of 150 male where I was working, and I was making that gender balance with my presence, because females, they themselves are not happy to come in the front and talk about their they don't want to do the knowledge sharing. But these male professionals, I believe, they are literally helping the women to do this. And we need to have, again, I would say that we need to have these role models, we need to have these mentors, and we need to have someone who should support women to women, and even the males are supporting the women as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, please, your comment.
One of we get a lot of compliments from our industry peers, even outside the industry, for leading the way and trailblazing when it comes to diversity and gender parity in Pakistan. But I think one of the things that has, and when we keep looking for that secret sauce, you know, sab humse पूछते हैं अपना playbook बता दें, tell us what worked for you, why is this working for you, why is it not working for somebody else? And I think that one secret sauce that I've never not been able to sort of articulate or put or codify really is the fact that it really started from the tone at the top. 7 years ago, one of our GMs sat down and said, I'm going to be that person who's going to bring gender parity into this BU. I don't care what comes my way. And there were times where we had to keep roles open for 6 months. And he was the one who stood ground and said, nope, until you tell me there is not a single female that you can find for this role which is appropriate enough, and we've exhausted all of Pakistan, that's the only time when I'll actually consider putting a male in this job. It was a man. And it was a 7-year journey for him. He just left for another role outside, but the legacy that he's left behind is immense. So I think having the right tone at the top is always important. There is nothing anyone else can do until the leadership is aligned in terms of the fact that this really is something that they need to prioritize. This is a core strategic objective. So that's one. And to the point Halima was making, all the initiatives that I just talked about in my previous narrative was all led by men. They were all men who looked at the problem and said, you know, the solve is relatively easy. I don't understand why nobody's doing it. Shiro's, which you found quite impressive, was actually was a brainchild of a male area sales manager who kind of understood the problems that probably somebody like me who's sitting on the board was not able to identify or find a resolve for. So I think that is what has enabled PepsiCo. And at the end of the day, it has to be the fight to bring in more women and to allow them to strive in the workforce cannot be driven and fought by women alone. We need to be in partnership with men who are like-minded, but then we also have the responsibility of making them aware and educating them in this space. One of the things that we've started doing, and I think has worked really well for us as well, particularly when it comes to Frontline, is having these scaled gender sensitization programs. And they are not just a one-off program where somebody comes for 3 hours, sits and goes away. These programs last for up to 6 months. There are multiple interventions that come through, and the revelations that these men sort of go through during these sessions is quite meaningful to see. So I think the onus on the women in the workforce is essentially to Halima's point, speak up, talk about their problems, make the men around them aware of it, and partner with them to be able to grow further in the organization. So yeah.
Thank you. And I think, Sarah, this is extremely important when you're working in an organization, and if the leadership recognizes this is very important. For example, at STPI, this entire expo you see downstairs, this wouldn't have been possible if my boss didn't support me. It's all because I floated an idea. He said, go ahead. And it's all his support that we are able to do this conference. We are able to do this. Even the conference unit is all women led. So that's the leadership that encourages you. If
I think we
leadership,
should give Dr. Abed a huge round of applause for
that's
this.
so I think that there are organizations who are setting things up and who are setting examples. That's very much needed. So um, now my next questions are, I would require all of you to comment. So it's going to be
questions do you have?
so I have so many other questions, but keeping in the interest of time, I'm going to limit my questions to just last two questions from all of you, because I don't know when we'll be able to gather all of you again for this kind of discussion. It's because this is very rare nowadays. Yes, gender sensitization, gender equity, empowerment, everyone talks about it, but nobody's actually talking about the ground realities, and we are doing this here right now, so this is very meaningful. My question is, how can organizations across different sectors collaborate to advance gender diversity in frontline roles? Are there specific partnerships or collective actions that you believe would accelerate progress and create a stronger support system for women in these positions? We know there are organizations, SDPI, PepsiCo, Nestle, Engro, everyone's doing work. But what about, integrating that work and connecting together to share best practices?
So I'm just going to sort of not answer your question, but add on to it. And one of the things, and probably then we'll ask Nabila, you to probably start on this one. And the reason why I say that is, the vision that I have when it comes to gender parity in Pakistan specifically is companies should not be allowed to hire women if they do not have a certain set of basic infrastructure. मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं किसी को हायर करती हूँ तो द रिक्वायरमेंट इसकी टेबल होनी चाहिए, कुर्सी होनी चाहिए. अगर आप ट्रांसपोर्टेशन देते हैं, सैलरी एक इंडस्ट्री पैरिटी पे होनी चाहिए. सो वी डू ऑल ऑफ दीज चेक्स बिफोर वी आर विलिंग टू ब्रिंग इन एनीवन टू द वर्कफोर्स. बट what we really need, not just from a frontline point of view, in general, to say, I'm sorry, but as an organization, whether it's mandated by the UN or it's mandated by MCC or SDPI, and say, unless you are able to sort of make sure, if you want to hire women and if you want to drive your gender parity agenda, you need to make sure that you have 7 things in play, and that's just the baseline. And then you can build on top of that. So that's one. And this is an unlock that we've been trying to create through various partnerships. So I know organizations like us do come together. I think Jazz has been doing a fantastic job in terms of creating that platform. On the talent piece, not just gender piece, we work closely with Unilever because they have this whole reimagined platform. I know we want to work and co-create, particularly when we talk about farm holes with Syngenta. But like you said, it's in isolation. So I think that's been probably my question. And Nabila, if you could help me understand how we can get this going.
Before I go there, no, I will need your help. But before I answer that, there is just one thing that I want to say, and that's I want to come in defense of the pretty women. So I think what we need is not bar them from any jobs. If they want to be a receptionist, let them be receptionist. The way to go about it is to make sure the organization have harassment policies in place, and they are making sure that there is accountability. Because if a woman is pretty, you can't just discriminate against her. That's not what we are trying to promote here. That was just when I was listening to it, I said this is not the message that should go. The other thing that is also very important, and I just want to say that so you're conscious of it next time you talk about these things, is women do this, women do that, women get jealous, women get ambitious. Why women? have you never seen a man get jealous? When a woman does that, the whole gender has to take the blame. And if a man is responsible, so then he's, and also if you notice, there are some memes going on social media as well. If you notice, if a man is doing the same thing, it's given a very positive spin. A woman is jealous and, excuse my word, bitchy, but a man is ambitious and driven. So be careful. Don't say that. You can talk about individuals. Individuals are different. It has got nothing to do with gender. I have worked with brilliant female bosses and very bad male bosses. And I've also worked with the vice versa situation. So it's not gender specific. People can be good leaders, people can be bad leaders, and that depends on their own upbringing and a lot of things. Coming back to your question, we have a long way to go, but we need forums where best practices are shared. We need data where we can actually prove what is working, what is not working. Pakistan specific, we have a lot of global data, but what works in Pakistan? And we for as WEPS, we provide one forum. We also introduce the WEPS Awards, which acknowledges the best people who are doing best practices. And the reason why we keep saying that become a WEPS signatory, because that gives you access to forums, both national, regional and international, and it also gives you a lot of tools and manuals to sort of do things systematically. So you can evaluate, measure, and, move in the right direction. And now for help.
Here we go. Okay, next for me, I'll answer this question very simply. There are some current forums. I don't want to establish a new one. I think there's the Federal Chamber of Commerce. Again, there are other chambers that are there. Can be mainstream. We sit down over there. Then there are global forums like the Global Care one that Nabil also mentioned, that care is an important aspect. The idea is that we all need to sit down together. And I think I loved Sarah's idea, have some baselines that need to be there. Otherwise, we just aren't walking the talk. And of course, when we are talking, when we do make certain statements, I know there's sometimes we do stereotyping, but the idea is, I think we recognize it sometimes, but it's important for us to not stereotype, because that is wrong, and make sure that we sort of go against these barriers. So for me, FPCCI would be one, OICCI, again, is another one where most of us are working together. BBC, Pakistan Business Forum. But again, they all have their subcommittees. Again, maybe we need to be much more aggressive in there and set some benchmarks and move forward on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kiran, your comment, please.
Thank you very much. So I think, like everybody is commenting, there are different efforts going on in each organization, and definitely there's merit in getting together, joining hands, doing, bringing about a bigger change at a bigger scale and so on. I think there's one interesting forum that most of us are part of is Male Champions of Change. And I think kind of covers everything what we've spoken about, creating male allies, male advocates and all. Here at Syngenta, we also have our male, the DEI champion, who's a guy, and he's doing great stuff, bringing all the improvements in the policies and so on. There's another thing that I'd like to speak about. Sarah made a comment on how PepsiCo is working on women farmers, and I'd like to take this opportunity to collaborate with PepsiCo, because there's one program that Syngenta is working on. It's called Nazdeek Centers. So like I mentioned before, that we've at Syngenta, we've got the biggest franchising network in Pakistan. And now we are working on a hub and spoke model where those Nazdeek centers are going to be solely owned and driven by women. within their villages, within their, vicinity around their home and so on and so forth. So there's a plan in the works, wherein we are targeting to actually launch it somewhere in 2025 with a specific target, with a specific timeline and so on and so forth. So I think I'm just going to seize this opportunity of requesting Sarah that we can get together and maybe work together on something, something for women farmers. And yeah, there are many platforms. It's just that maybe we are not talking about those critical, things that where we can join hands and create a much bigger difference. So yeah, that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Halima.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everyone here, with Kiran, Nadia, Sarah, and Rabia as well, that we need to aggressively work on these forums to have this kind of inclusivity. And yes, with the Women in Energy, we are all available for the collaboration and cooperation.
Thank you so much, everyone. And being moderator, it's my duty to wrap things up on time. Otherwise, I would have loved to open the floor for question and answer session, but I'm sure that women sitting here must have learned a lot from the women trailblazers we invited over. Thanks to PepsiCo for the support, for setting things up, for setting this panel up, and for bringing this debate here at SDC. And I'm sure that this will not stop here. We will be sharing the recommendations with the key stakeholders, whether they're from private sector or public sector. And those recommendations will also be compiled and shared during our closing plenary that we are having today. This is the last day of this conference, and I'm so glad that we are concluding over such positive notes and hopeful messages. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nabila, Rabia, Sarah, Halima, and Kiran for joining us and for actually setting up brilliant precedences for so many of us here. And I'm sure when we are meeting next time, we will be, we'll share some very good stories. So thank you everyone. Do visit the food court and do visit the expo downstairs. We have so many women-led startups. May I please request all of you to gather for the group photo, please?
I think I can leave since I'm not there physically. So.
नहीं. You can stay here. आपको हम screen से आप cover कर सकते हैं?
All right.
Yes, please.
Okay.